Hello, my name is Celina, and I'm a part of the Let's Discuss A Course in Miracles webinar team at the Foundation for Inner Peace. The mission of the foundation is to publish, distribute, and discuss A Course in Miracles, and we hold these Let's Discuss online webinars to express our vision of extending love through Course teachings. Today, we bring you our web event, Let's Discuss Forgiveness, Remembering to Forget or Forgetting to Remember. This event is being broadcast live and will run for approximately 90 minutes. We sincerely appreciate everyone who submitted questions in advance, and as always, we ask that Spirit guide our discussion, and time permitting, we will also take some live Q&A during the session. If you're joining us live, you can submit your questions using the Q&A button at the edge of your screen. Today's conversation will be in English, and we also provide live, simultaneous Spanish translation for our audience. To listen in Spanish, click the interpretation button in your webinar controls and select the Spanish channel. We also post these instructions in the chat for those needing them. Before we introduce our panelists, I invite you to take a moment for us to pause and center in prayer. In Chapter 2 of A Course in Miracles, the Course reminds us that there is much we can do on behalf of our healing and that of others if we think of situations in this way. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent Him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do, because He who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever He wishes, knowing He goes there with me. I will be healed as I let Him teach me to heal. As many of us know, A Course in Miracles teaches us that the world we see is not real. Yet what we encounter in this world feels irrefutably real. And in a world filled with political unrest, suffering at borders, job losses, and growing mental health challenges, you name it. It's easy to become disheartened and feel disempowered. So, how do we navigate the overwhelming events unfolding in our world? The Course reminds us that we have the power to shift our perceptions. It is through the process of remembering and forgetting, guided by the Holy Spirit, that we can transform our experience. So, we are fortunate today to be joined by longtime course students and teachers who will share their insights, reflections, and experiences. And I am delighted to be joined by Foundation President Tam Morgan. And we also have our dear Bruce Gregory, Richard Smoley, and Keith Kavanagh. Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to you all.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Good to see
Hi.
you all.
You too.
So before we dive into today's conversation, I want to share that we received some thoughtful and insightful questions from our registrants, and I want to honor the courage it takes to explore true forgiveness as the Course teaches, particularly when it involves pain, trauma, even the complexities of the global suffering. And some of the questions submitted touch on the difficulty of forgiving ourselves and others, especially in cases where the hurt feels unforgivable or when the trust has been broken. Questions like, how do we forgive in extreme cases like trauma or violence? Or what does it really mean to forgive without bypassing the deep pain? These are ones that even seasoned course students continue to wrestle with. So, knowing it's not easy to find the right path in these areas, we're here to explore together how the Course guides us in releasing them, and releasing by seeing them differently and returning to a state of peace, even when the world seems to challenge us. So, with that, I'm going to give it to you, maybe even Tam first, if she has anything she would like to add, because this is a topic of discussion that she was inspired to hold. So, thanks for joining.
Thank you, Celina. Some of this actually came about because I'm at an age, at age 66, where I discuss with a lot of people that are my age that their memory isn't the same as what it used to be. And what things are important to remember, what things are blessings that we forget, what things, when you take it to the extreme of someone had a very dear friend with Alzheimer's, and he didn't go through an angry stage, but he did start to forget everything. And in that, he seemed quite happy. Not something to recommend in order to find happiness, but what is it that is appropriate for us to remember? What does memory serve for us within that? And particularly on the path of forgiveness, because when we remember something that's hurtful, the path of forgiveness and what the Course teaches us in that does bring us out of the suffering to a state of happiness, which many of us are looking for. And I'll start with this quote from the Course, which does say two different. In the face of your fear of forgiveness, which he perceives as clearly as he knows forgiveness is release, he will teach you to remember that forgiveness is not loss, but your salvation. And also, the sleep of forgetfulness is the only unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. And with that, I'm setting the tone here. There's a lot going on in the world that people are very riled up about. And do we look the other way? What does it mean, even turning the other cheek in this path of forgiving what we perceive that we see? So I would like to open it up to any of you wonderful course students and scholars to talk about how you feel about this and about your own challenges right now as it comes up, because I find that a lot of our viewers really, it's very helpful to not just hear global things about how we forgive, but really sometimes personal experience too. So it relates to how we are each grappling through this. So I know I'm going to start with you, Bruce, because you actually came to be part of this panel because it came up that as such a long time course student, you are struggling with things within this arena, and would love to hear this because I know how dedicated you have been to the course and its applied principles.
Thank you, Tam. I feel as though for many years in my life, I majored in unforgiveness. When I was age 8, I received a knock at the front door. I opened it, and there was the class bully and his chunky enforcer. And they asked me, "Would you like to come out and play?" And I was puzzled because they were not my friends. And then I heard an inner voice, perhaps the first time I ever heard that. And I assumed it was the voice of God. And it said, eventually, you're going to have to learn to get along with people. Right. So I went to the park with them and I asked them, well, what shall we play? And they said, Target, and you're it. And then I looked on the ground and there was a pile of rocks ready made to throw. I put two and two together and ran away as they threw the rocks at me with good aim. I vowed I'd never trust anyone ever again. That was a guiding rule for me from the year 8 until my early 20s, when I realized I could no longer handle that solution. And that prepared me, shall we say, for A Course in Miracles, because I needed help. Your mom was a big help for me, as well as some of her friends. Doing past life regression, I realized I'd been running away then as well as now. And so I said, I need to find a way to learn to love life and to love people. And with the course, it helped me to start in that direction. In the beginning, it was hard to do because I was much more proficient at judgment. I think perhaps we all are, and it seemed that I was getting out of control. But the more that I understood the prayer that we started our session with, of asking for help and of realizing that on our own we find it very difficult to forgive, very difficult to see any possible difference. But with asking for help, helping me to see things differently, I started to have breakthroughs and had peace come and take the place of my fear and my anger. And so I've started to major in forgiveness as opposed to unforgiveness in this latter half of my life. And here I'm about to turn 80, so it's about time to get it done. So I'm glad to help you out with that start.
I just want to jump in right away and then we'll have others speak. But what are your challenges now that have been coming up so
Yeah,
strongly when you've been practicing this course for so long? Are you
exactly.
surprised that there are still challenges? Are you?
Yes. Um, the human psyche is a very puzzling mystery, I think, for all of us. When I left New York City and moved out to rural Arizona, there were two jobs. One, of course, was skinning coyotes, which I'd not been trained for, and the other one was working as a prison counselor, dealing with quote unquote thugs, if you will, people who were arrested for violence when I didn't want to do that. But my experience of being on the prison yard and hearing them start to taunt me and whistle at me, and it made me terrified. And that's when I went home that night and I said, God, I can't do this. I can't skin coyotes, and I can't work with these violent people. And he said, you got it wrong. He said, you made their day. He said, these people have an intuition that tells them that you happen to be gay. And and in that situation, they're thrilled because they think of themselves as the lowest rung of the ladder. And now there's someone lower down on the rung in their opinion, and they're thrilled to have you to make them feel better about themselves. I said, God, you're so smart. I never would have thought of that. I said, I'm pretty good with people in crisis. I'll dedicate my life to however long this job lasts. It lasted 30 years. And it was a joy to go to work with those guys starting the very next day. Everything changed because of a willingness, but also because of guidance and understanding that came from within. So that helped me to forgive them. And in the process, I learned to forgive the ones that bullied me and then work to build a relationship even with the bullies. And now they're my friends, the ones that beat, that threw rocks at me when I was 8. So it's opened the door. In terms of presently, um, working in a prison for 30 years, I realized that that was my opportunity to learn to forgive individual violence. When I finished that job and retired, I asked within, what's next? And the voice said, corporate violence. You have a problem with groups of people that you are afraid of for various reasons. And so I said, okay. When I moved back to Atlanta, that began in terms of churches, groups, and so I've had to work with that using the course principles so that rather than seeing a group of people as being negative and fearful, I had to say, well, how would the course ask me to look at these people? Let me not demonize them. And because I was asked to be the president of the Residents Association of my building that was working against a slumlord situation, I said, we have to work in a way that is kind and thoughtful, no matter what we feel they've done to us. And so it has been difficult, but it's also guided me. Without the course, I would have been torn apart again. So, and then as I mentioned a little earlier before we started, in terms of my politics, I thought that I didn't want to be surrounded by people who differed in politics from my particular perspective. And I'm not the only one on the planet. And so a person moved in wearing a red Make America Great hat. And I took offense at the hat. And I heard the Holy Spirit tell me, go deeper, go deeper. And I thought, okay, he's not a hat. He's a human being. He's a guy. I'll welcome him to the floor and we'll get to, and now we're best of friends. So it seems as though I'm being taught after majoring in unforgiveness for so many decades based on earlier trauma that whether it's groups of people, individuals, or neighbors, it's important to learn that my fear or my projections are in the way of a beautiful experience of healing and wholeness, not only for me, but for the other people. To hear someone that I was afraid of being with or chose not to be with say, I am so glad that we are friends. You are just a wonderful friend, is a miracle. And so I'm working through this as best I can. I still don't know how to handle what's going on in Washington. Part of me wants to march, and my body is kind of not as strong as it used to be for that kind of work. So I'm still asking what's the best way that I can be a healing influence in this difficult time, and we'll see what the answer is.
Thank you so much for that. That's going to move me right over to Keith, who is not in this country, meaning the United States, and has his own perspective on all of this, I assume. So, Keith, how are you feeling about everything going on in the world now and in relationship to your practice, which I know is extremely deep?
Thanks, Tom. Well, the first thing we have to really clearly understand is that we're course students. And the forgiveness that we're taught to do in A Course in Miracles isn't the forgiveness that the world understands. So if we're getting locked into the forgiveness of the world and we think forgiveness is something one body does to another body, that's not possible. You see, you cannot judge and then forgive. It doesn't make sense. You've made the error real. You've made the sin real. And the cardinal, sin, if there was one, in A Course in Miracles, is that you don't make the error real and then set out to fix it. You see? So just a few quotes from the Course just to put it on track. Forgiveness has a teacher who will fail in nothing. Rest a while in this. Do not attempt to judge forgiveness, nor to set it in an earthly frame. Forgiveness has nothing to do with an earthly frame. See? Forgiveness has nothing to do with me making the error real and then setting out to somehow fix it or justify it or change it or be a holy ego. It's got nothing to do with that. That's not what forgiveness is at all. So we have to understand some of the metaphysics. So let's just dive into some rather sobering passages from A Course in Miracles. And I think we'll start with this one. And this is from the text, and it's from chapter 18, section 2, paragraph 5. Dreams show you that you have the power to make a world as you would have it be, and that because you want to see it, and while you see it, you do not doubt that it is real. Yet here is a world, clearly within your mind, that seems to be outside. You do not respond to it as though you made it. Nor do you realize that the emotions the dream produces must come from you. It is the figures in the dream and what they do that seem to make the dream. You do not realize that you are making them act out for you. For if you did, the guilt would not be theirs, and the illusion of satisfaction would be gone. Just on that same vein, this is from chapter 27, and it's section 8 and it's paragraph 10. The secret of salvation is but this, that you are doing this unto yourself. No matter what form of the attack, this still is true. Whoever takes the role of enemy and of attacker, still this is the truth. Whatever seems to be the cause of any pain and suffering you feel, still this is true. For you would not react at all to figures in a dream you knew you were dreaming. Let them be as hateful and as vicious as they may. They could have no effect on you unless you fail to recognize it is your dream. So the first important thing we learn from A Course in Miracles is this isn't reality. This is a dream. You're not the figure in the dream. The figure in the dream is no reality. You are the dreamer of everything. Because you're not a body. You're free. You're still as God created you. You are the consciousness that mistakenly thought it separated from God and made up a world full of dream figures. And you wrote all the storylines for them, and then you shattered yourself and pretended to be all the figures in your dream, creating a state of mindlessness where you don't know you're the one that's dreaming all of this. And now you, and when I say you, I'm talking to everyone because there's one consciousness dreaming all the dream figures. Like our quote said to us, you're making them all act out. It's not talking to you, the dream figure. You're not the dream figure. The Course says the fear was held in place because he did not realize that he was the author of the dream and not the figure in the dream. You see? So A Course in Miracles gives us a completely different context for forgiveness. If you understand, now, this doesn't mean you're the only dream figure that's real and none of the rest of them are real. That's how your ego will hear this. You're not an ego. You're the Son of God. And everyone is that same Son of God. And so the Course tells us the real world is the state of mind where the only purpose of the world is seen to be forgiveness. This is a dream of death that you're dreaming. You're not in it as a character, okay? The only truth to all the characters in the dream is the one mind that's dreaming them. And so A Course in Miracles teaches us that forgiveness is a means by which we heal our mind and come home to the truth of everyone and share that identity with our brothers. So I just want to bring a few more quotes into it. This world will bind your feet and tie your hands and kill your body only if you think that it was made to crucify God's Son. Now, God's Son is not a body. God's Son is not a dream figure. If you identify as a dream figure, as a body, then the world will seem to tie your hands and kill your body. No doubt about it, it's a dream of death. To continue, for even though it was a dream of death, you need not let it stand for this to you. Let this be changed, and nothing in the world but must be changed as well. For nothing here is defined as what you see it for. How lovely is the world whose purpose is forgiveness of God's Son. This same world. How free from fear, how filled with blessing and with happiness, and what a joyous thing it is to dwell a little while in such a happy place. So the Course is saying, listen, you're dreaming this dream. It's a dream of death. It's full of awfulness, but there's no one else to blame. It's your dream. And all the dream figures that you see as separate from you, they're not. The only truth of all of them is the one mind that's here dreaming this dream. One holy, innocent Son of God. So The Course is going, if you identify as a body, you're going to feel like you're an innocent victim of all these terrible storylines and these terrible people out there, but you're the one that's dreaming all of this. So until we understand this, we'll say things like, well, how do I forgive the awful things that's going on in the Middle East? How do I forgive the awful things that's going on between Russia and Ukraine? And what we mean is, how do I forgive the awful dream figures that are separate from me, that are other than me, in whom my guilt is shining for me, so I don't have to feel it in myself? You see? So A Course in Miracles makes no sense until we've done what it asks us to do and we shift the purpose of the world. It's a dream of death. It's awfulness, but it's a dream. But it now has a purpose. You, the mind that's here, have hidden your guilt in all the other dream figures. And you're the one that's dreaming them. The only one the guilt belongs to is you. It's shining in everyone else because that's where you hid it. And A Course in Miracles says you have one problem. You're selfing. You're identifying as a body. You're identifying as a dream figure. And that is the cause of all your pain. And there's one solution to all the problems you think you have, and it's to stop doing that. And we have a formula. It's called forgiveness. That's how you stop identifying as a body with a story and you come home to the stillness in your mind that is the Holy Spirit and that is your right mind itself. And that's what forgiveness is for. So what we have to do is we need to shift the purpose of the world. So as you're watching the news, as someone cuts you off in traffic, an awfulness comes up in you, a sense of wrongness, a sense of suffering. And it tries to blame the world. And so in every single moment, if we want the Holy Spirit as our teacher, the first thing we have to do is shift the purpose of the world. The first thing we need to do is surrender. This is my dream. I made the dream to hide this awfulness and see it outside of me. But now the dream has a holy purpose. As the dream unfolds, all the guilt I didn't want to have to look at in me is going to shine in the dream. And I'm going to go, aha, there's my guilt. It's shining in all the other dream figures. And now I get to look at it in myself. I get to withdraw my projection. Because the ego is shouting, oh, look what you did to me. Look at this suffering that you're after causing me. I can't believe it. There's awful people out there. No, there's not. All that awfulness is in the mind that's looking at the world. And the world will show it to us. And our job is to own the disgust, the hatred, the pain, the suffering that comes up in my mind. And the Course says, the only thing I want from you is your gratitude to your brother, because he'll show you this. He will show you the thing in your mind that's keeping you from God. He will show you the obstacles to the awareness of love's presence. And all you have to do is say, thank you. Now I'll take it from here. I will sit with this pain in myself and I will not project it. This is what I forgive. And when we stop projecting, when we address the shadow of sin, guilt, and fear in our own mind where it is, and not in the world where it's not, it can't stand. When you welcome suffering and grief and pain without a story, without a projection, the Holy Spirit can erase it. And that's what forgiveness is for.
Thank you, Keith. On a personal note,
Hmm?
anything ever upset you?
Yeah, I mean, my dark night of the soul was an anxiety disorder that hit in, I don't know, about 14 years ago. And that really gave me a half-life for 8 years. Um, and I would have anxiety from the moment I got up in the morning until I went to bed at night. And I had to shake my leg constantly. I couldn't even stop shaking my leg because if I did, it felt like I would explode. I couldn't meditate. It took me like 30 goes falling asleep and sort of um, having spasms and sort of, it was awful. It was the worst anxiety imaginable. Like I could never have fathomed what anxiety would be like. And it left me so low that, the Course in Miracles says, tolerance for pain may be high, but it's not without limit. Eventually, everyone begins to realize that there must be another way. And this is where, you know, our so we have things like this happen, like an anxiety disorder, like a job loss, like homelessness, like a relationship breakup, like a bereavement. And this initiates the dark night of the soul. And we find ourselves in the first of the development of trust stages, where these changes are introduced and this terrible suffering, where loss is experienced in this terrible suffering. And the Course says, and the way you get out of the first stage is that you accept that everything that's happening is helpful. The Course says, what could you not accept if you but knew that everything that happens, past, present, and to come, is gently planned by one whose only purpose is your good? So when we accept that, we get out of the first stage of trust and into the second of the stage of trust. Now we can be taught. Now we're ready to learn about forgiveness. Now we're ready to begin to learn how we do that, why we do it, and how we go about doing it. So for me, what I learned to do then was apply the Course. And my teacher was Ken Wapnick, and he had this beautiful metaphor about being in the cinema with Jesus. And so this is the same idea as being above the battleground. There's a worlding. It's a dream. There are insane thoughts in your mind of a dream figure. That's the dream. And there are awful feelings. There's guilt. Okay? Guilt is intrinsic and implicit in the decision to identify as a body, as a separate self. Okay, so that's the dream. But who sees all that? What is it in your mind that can see all that? That can see the insanity in the mind, the ego thought system, and all the pain and the suffering and the grief and the hatred. You see, so this was my practice. So I learned from Ken. My job was, how well can I forgive my ego? And I would spend the whole day going, well, there's awful anxiety there in the wrong mind, but what does it have to do with my right mind? What does it have to do with what I am in the cinema with Jesus? What does it have to do with above the battleground? Now, I wasn't doing that to spiritually bypass the suffering. I was allowing the suffering. I wasn't fighting it. The world was showing me this. The world was blessing me by letting me see the fear in my mind. So it was welcome. But I was acknowledging that there was a me that was welcoming. So that was the entire day. How better today can I forgive the anxiety? Can I welcome the anxiety without any of the stories the mind wants to spin about it? How well can I forgive the anxiety being here and feel what I am that's doing the forgiveness? So that was how I brought my wrong mind to my right mind. And the anxiety felt better within 2 months. And the anxiety fell away completely within 4.5 months. Mm. So that was my experience of a dark night of the soul, getting out of the first of the stages of the development of trust and experiencing the way forgiveness can remove the suffering from our mind once we let the stories go. Once we welcome the sin where it is in our own mind and not out there, and we don't entertain stories about it, it's easily removed by the Holy Spirit.
Thank you so much for that. I hope that's helpful for others. It's profound and deep and course speak. And, you know, it's really great to have something on that level in these webinars, to really get to the source of what is being taught to us and how we apply it. And with that, Richard, I'd love you to join in with your perspective, your way of dealing with the projections of the outside world that come in.
Okay. Well, thank you. I really appreciate your inviting me to be on this. It's been a delightful panel, and I certainly agree with everything Bruce and Keith have said. And in fact, what Keith was saying reminded me of a parable I wrote for a book of mine called A Theology of Love, Reimagining Christianity Through a Course in Miracles. And I'll tell it to you briefly. A man builds a box that's big enough for him to fit in and more. He lines this box with mirrors on all sides, floor, ceiling, even on the lid. And he goes into the box, pulls the lid down on himself. So all he sees of himself in all directions, above, below, right, left, front, center, is endless reiterated images of himself. And he starts to spend time in this box, and little by little, he starts to go mad. He starts to imagine that these iterated faces of himself are other people. You know, one of them, he smiles, looks back at him, he's got a friend. He frowns, someone else, in another expression, so now he has an enemy. And sooner he gets even more crazy, and then he decides he's one of those faces in the mirror, and all of the other faces are somehow his friends or enemies or whatever. So, of course, he's totally mad. He's totally forgotten there's anything else. Now, somebody on the outside kind of hears him and understands his situation and might be inspired to just pull the lid off and show him the truth. But he realizes that this would just drive this man further into madness. So this voice on the outside starts telling him, this is not really who you are. You know, you made all this stuff up. Of course, the man doesn't believe it at first. He just thinks it's another crazy voice saying crazy things. But look, after a while, he kind of starts to settle down, and this voice on the outside, you know, it kind of reminds him of something. And it kind of reminds him that, yeah, hey, I guess I did build this box way back when. I don't even know why. And slowly, the voice calms him, and the man finally lifts the lid off his own box and gets out. And that's pretty much, well, in a sense, what Keith was saying. You know, who's the man? Us, the Son of God. Who's the mad figure that creates all of this thing inside us, the ego? Who's the voice on the outside that little by little wakes us up? The Holy Spirit. So that's an illustrative way of putting what I think the Course is saying and what Keith very helpfully outlined. But you did ask me how I deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to suggest an activity, all of us. And I want you to begin by thinking of someone whose guts you really hate. Mm. Now, for the purposes, it could be someone you hate personally, but for the purposes of this exercise, try to make it a public figure. This will be easy because you've already thought of this person, and I'm not going to name any suggestions. You know who this person is whose guts you hate, okay? Well, why don't you close your eyes and visualize this person who, as we've already established, whose guts you hate. Close your eyes and visualize this person, whatever guise this person may peer, he or she, and say this: my brother, peace and joy I offer you, that I may have God's peace and joy as mine. Again, my brother, peace and joy I offer you, that I may have God's peace and joy as mine. Still thinking of this figure. Say again, my brother, peace and joy I offer you, that I may have God's peace and joy as mine. That is the Course's solution. My kind of agitation around any given public figure is reduced significantly if I just can remember this, and maybe do it every once in a while, to the extent that, to the extent that it comes up. Other suggestions: avoid things that poison your mind, whatever these things are. I used to avoid horror movies because I felt somehow they were poisoning my mind. They were kind of upsetting to me. And this was when I was much younger. And now I can watch horror movies. I mean, they go a little too far these days with the stage blood and guts, but certainly doesn't disturb me. I have to be a little more careful with news because, how does news work? Well, news works, and I don't watch local TV news, but there's a bank of TVs, my health club, so I'm there, on the treadmill, and I can't help looking at some of the stuff, even without the sound. And it's quite clear that the news stations are pretty much all designed to stimulate your adrenaline, in a sense, addict you on your own adrenaline. And certain psychiatrists have said that there is such a thing as adrenaline addiction. You're not shooting up this stuff. You're addicted to your own self-generated adrenaline. And I think one has to be at least aware of this possibility when seeing things like TV news, the paper, your good friend's rants on Facebook or wherever. And the ones that upset you the most are usually the ones you agree with, because you've already unfriended all the people you disagreed with. So I think that's useful. I think it's a very useful, practical way, right out of the course, to deal with some of the most charged figures in your mental landscape.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. There's so many levels that we deal with. Am I on here? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Wasn't sure because my computer's a little funny today, so I don't see that. But what I did want to say, like, there's an incredibly direct, the Course says that it calls itself A Course in Miracles because it is not the only way, and not the Course in Miracles. In choosing this course, it does say it is a direct path up the mountain to remembering our true state of love. But within that, a lot of us are experiencing different levels of that remembrance and that awakening. And in that, I just want to offer something that I found touching, which is story of, and I'm going to change it a little, but the story of a child who asks an elder, what is how you walk this world when there's so many horrible things in the world. And the elder says to the child, it's like a wolf. It's two wolves. We're two wolves inside. And talking about our ego form. Two wolves inside. And one has greed and hatred and wants to kill and names off all of these difficult, challenging egoic qualities. And the other one wants peace and love and kindness. And the child says, which one wins? And the answer is, which wolf do we choose to feed? That's the winner. So when we get addicted, as you were saying, Richard, to a certain thought form, certain news, certain people that we stay with that agree with you in anger and rage, and that gets fed. And that's the wolf that gets fed. And when we move to really focusing and wanting to remember love and our true state of being, that's what the course is here for. That's why we choose that practice, to get us there, to see what we want to see, so that then as we anchor in that and anchor in that and anchor in that, we can then watch a horror movie and not have it join you. There is a detachment or a non-attachment about it within the walking of this. And it doesn't mean that we're not feeling or compassionate. So we can see that there is a state of the world that looks like there's suffering in here. And it is the compassion is not necessarily to join that suffering, but to see that this is a dream. And this is my speaking right now, but my way of dealing with it is to remember to walk the walk of love instead of to change the outside dream of anyone. I will hold someone in compassion because they have forgotten that they are love. But I'm choosing less and less to hold people in compassion for their specific narratives about their story of victimization, pain, and suffering. And that's what I'm learning through the level of where the course is teaching me right now. I don't feel like I am a master in this. I think that, Keith is in his further practice of this to where he sees, but I do think there are ways to explain the course in many different levels without mixing levels, and where it will meet you wherever you are and bring you through the level in which you are. And the only remembering that seems to be truly necessary here is not of past crimes, present crimes, or future crimes, but it's who we truly are, which is love. And that includes seeing anyone with whom we disagree as also a reflection of that love, playing their role in this dream. And it may be horrific, or it may be someone who has killed people. And there seem to be within the dream consequences that happen because of that. But when it comes to awakening from the dream itself, we're all just playing a role. And we believe that everything is perfect, or we don't. And there's not a middle ground here. And within that, if everything is perfect, everyone who's playing their role, whether it looks good or bad, is part of that dream. And Keith talked about it on a deeper level. But within that dream, it can be honored. So if someone is doing something that I disagree with, and it feels, let's just use the word unconscionable. At this level of understanding where I'm walking, I bless them for doing that, but I'm going to also be indignant. And I don't identify with the I'm who's being indignant, but that is my role to help balance whatever's going on. And it's not, I know I think it's a Zen teaching that if someone comes in to rob the temple, desecrate the temple, the guardian of the temple, who knows that he or she is love, will take a stick that's love and will get that thief or the person who's desecrating it out of the temple. Jesus got angry with the moneylenders. It doesn't mean you don't act on a behalf within this dream that you need, in ways you need to act to balance an energetic that feels off course or out of alignment. But it does mean that you don't identify with it as such within the dream, and that you anchor in the memory and the remembrance that you are love, and so is that person, and so is everything that's going on around here. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but that's what's come to me in these times right now that I can find challenging. And in my meditation, I go to a very deep level. None of this exists. And when my eyes open, there's more interactions to get me eventually to that place where I don't even see that this exists. But I do move through the levels and in different ways. And I am taught continually by the Course with the deepening of what those levels are.
Some of us might remember a gentleman named Ken Keyes back in the late 60s, early 70s, who wrote a book called Handbook to Higher Consciousness. And a bunch of us in New York went out to Brooklyn to take a workshop with him. And he did something that transformed my life right then and there. He said, take a simple piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and then a bar across the top. Put a plus sign over the left half of the page, a negative sign over the right side of the page. Then think, like Richard was saying earlier, think of a friend, a human being, but a friend that you know, and I want you to describe in adjective form the positive qualities you see in that particular friend and list those, a certain number of them, whatever comes to mind, in the left column. Very good. Now in the right column, the things you do not like about your friend. He's a friend, but he's not a saint, or she. List those negative adjectives about them. Will you do that? We did that. Very good. Now, over the left column, I want you to add this particular phrase. I like myself when I am ... And then fill in the blank with each of the positive qualities you described your friend with, and see if you agree with that statement. Everyone agreed. It was amazing. What's going on here? Now, over the right-hand column, put this statement. I do not like myself when I am ... And then fill in with all of the words, negative descriptive words for your friend, and see if that fits as well. And we were shocked because it all exactly fit, that if we didn't like people who were stingy or late or whatever, we could see that it was also the quality we don't like in ourselves. And so that was my introduction to the concept of projection, that there's a sense of guilt, at least in the negative column, that we find uncomfortable, and we much rather project it out on other people, recognize it in them, condemn them, judge them, etc., thinking that that will make us, at some deep level, better, because we're not like that, even though we are. Now, whether we read many of Ken's works or just the Course itself, we see that the problem is not so much fear, though that's a bigger component, but it's the word guilt. And I was blessed with a terrifying experience back in, I guess it was 77 or 78, in which I came home and just sat down quietly in my apartment in New York City. And suddenly this vision and experience came over me in which it seemed to be the heavenly state, the pre-fall of man, if you will. And there was a voice that said, there is something that God is not being, he's not treating all of us equally. I can show you what you're missing by following me. And so it's like, this is curious. God is holding back. He's not loving us equally. And by going into that particular voice's suggestion, we entered a place of nothingness, because obviously there is nothing that God holds back. He gives us all. And the shift between oneness in everything and nothingness was so terrifying
Mm.
that at that moment, it was like billions and billions and billions of souls screaming in mortal agony, and descending into individual spaces. And then the voice, this that led this experiment, voice said, "Would you like to go back? Back to God, back to heaven, back to oneness?" And I could hear myself saying, why would I want to go back to God? He's just thrown me out of heaven and he'll want to kill me. I'll just be like, I'll stay here. And then as though I heard or sensed a word, gotcha. I've got you now. And this sense of a setup, of a feeling of guilt and shame for what we did, that we didn't laugh at, right? That's we forgot to laugh at that particular concept. And so that particular experience helped me to understand this strange thing that I would, use in my teaching. I would say, here in New York City, there are two places, let's say, that are open 24 hours a day: the door to your favorite store and the door to God, the door to Bloomingdale's, Walmart, whatever, and the door to God. Where does everyone go? They go to Bloomingdale's, they go to Walmart, but for some reason they don't go to God. What is it that keeps us from going to this source of ultimate love, if not that guilt that we feel? And so that with the Course, with the understanding that we got from Sigmund Freud, with, tremendous foundation in terms of looking our defense mechanisms, what we're doing in our process of forgiveness is taking bit by bit, the way I look at it personally, bit by bit of that sense of guilt that's been projected out. And I say, Holy Spirit, I'm having a hard time dealing with this particular person. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's not necessary to know why, but please help me to see this person differently. And then, but if it's real and I'm genuine in my desire or my willingness to escape the negativity, the pain, then something transforms. I don't know how it happens, but there's some kind of a shift, a filter that's inside of my mind or my ego has been lifted, evidently by the Holy Spirit. And it's not that it necessarily changes the other person as much as it releases my filter so that I see more deeply as to who they truly are. And they're not the person that I thought in the beginning. And then just one more piece of the puzzle, for me at least. I moved out from New York City with 5 other good friends, and it was the first time I ever had to live with other people. I just, as I described earlier, I'm someone that didn't trust people, but the Course was encouraging me to do that. So we joined together. And over time, I realized that maybe they didn't like me. Maybe I had problems and they didn't like, and I didn't like being criticized. And I got to a point of thinking, maybe I should just leave this spiritual family, this experiment of Course students. And then I said, well, but maybe what I'll do first before I leave, let me try that little exercise in forgiveness that Emilio Guzman, one of the first translators of the Course in Spanish, had given me. And he said, think of like Richard was saying, think of the person that you have difficulty with, that you have these bad feelings, and then say to them, I humbly apologize for all I've ever thought or said or done to hurt you 3 times. Then I forgive you for all you've ever thought or said or done to hurt me. And finally, I love you, for you're a child of God and I'm a child of God. And in his love, we are one. And then I would go to the next person, the next person, the next, and then release it. I felt no heavenly whatevers, but something happened. And then when I went back to the house and my friends came back and I saw them, I turned around to look at them. It was as though I were looking at a bunch of angels. I looked at these people. They looked like human beings, but deep inside of me, I said to myself, God has given me the most wonderful friends I could ever ask for. And to go from, I want to leave these people because they don't like me. And then an hour later, I have this in, incredibly powerful experience that says these people are created by God. They are whole, they are loving, they are wonderful. How could why would I ever want to leave these friends? So that then showed me this is how everyone is, that I have projected my guilt, my problems onto them and created an image, but it's not real. And I've seen it, it's happened. I cannot say it didn't. And so I always have that as my benchmark. And then I use one final statement in my mind that it's not just one voice I hear from the ego, but there's also the Holy Spirit. And I've simply coined them into being radio stations, WEGO and WGOD. Which channel am I listening to? And if I start to test them out and work with each, they show me very different paths. And I've learned that WGOD is a much better channel. Well, I'll share that.
Thank you for that.
That's beautiful.
I do want to say one thing because I'm deeply guided to, or I would be
Please.
quiet at this moment, but there is so much perception of division in this world. And I have to say, I've experienced walking in the course world since I was a child, before there
Yes.
was a course world. It was just a course, few people called the founders.
Yeah.
There was conflict there between Helen and Bill. There was not only conflict between Helen and Bill, there was conflict between Bill and Ken. There was conflict between when my mother got thrown into the mix because she ended up bonding more with Bill because Helen was picking on Bill and loving Ken. They're, shining approval on Ken and making Bill a target. So much, and watching within all of this what the course came out of. And then I got deeper in when I stepped in as co-president and president and seeing course teachers talking about how they didn't like other course teachers. And I was brought down to Mexico to bring healing to the conflict between all these different course teachers because this one didn't agree with what that one was saying. And then we move forward to this time in the course world where people are arguing with each other whether or not they agree with the United States president. Oh, the course is too right, the course is too left, the course, how can the course forgive Trump? How could the course not forgive Trump? Why do you not like me? Because I care about Trump. And what it is, all I can say are 2 words: stop it.
Mhm.
Stop it. If you're coming in for course teaching, come in for the course teaching. Listen to what we are saying about what forgiveness means. Stop defending your position in politics, in ego, what shirt you're wearing that someone doesn't think is the prettiest shirt on the planet. Stop it. And remember what we all are is love. And I'm sorry I moved to say that so strongly. And I'm not good because I can't even read the chat during this, but I'm very energetically in tune to this. And I just feel like Richard, you were saying, look at the chat and see what I can't. I'm here with you all in love. But something is asking for me to really say this because this time seems to need it. Every time seems to need it, and we don't need it at all. So the experience, I want to thank each of you, not because this is the end of our webinar. I don't even see what time it is on my computer, but for what you're coming and stepping forward to offer about a path of love and forgiveness. Forgiveness being one of the ways, one of the biggest ways the Course offers towards love and remembrance. So I'm sorry that I just jumped in that way, but I trust when I hear, and there you have it.
Yeah.
And Keith, what do you have to say at this moment?
The Course in Miracles makes this really easy. The sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept the atonement for himself. You see, the spiritualized ego wants to force it down everyone else's throat and go, you shouldn't be like this. You need the Course in Miracles. You need to forgive. No, it doesn't. You do. Let's just take a few little quotes that are similarly sobering.
Thank you.
Perhaps you do not fully realize just what holding grievances does to your mind. It seems to split you off from your source and make you unlike him, an ego. So let's take lesson 151. You have often been urged to refrain from judging, not because it's a right to be withheld from you. You cannot judge. You merely can believe the ego's judgments, all of which are false. Now, that's a very, very, very important passage. What you are isn't capable of judgment. What you are isn't capable of condemnation. An illusion of yourself, a wild illusion, frantic and distraught with no reality whatsoever in your mind that pretends to be you, an ego thought system is judging. That's not you. You can't judge. You can only mix yourself up with that ego thought system in your mind and think it has something to do with what you are as the Son of God. It has nothing to do with what you are as the Son of God. So forgiveness can be a very dry term coming from a Christian background about sacrifice and taking one from the team. Course in Miracles is going, no, this is your mechanism of salvation. This is liberation. Forgiveness is something you do to remember what you are that can't judge. And what you are that can't judge, that's what all your brothers are as well. That's the Son of God. And it's everywhere. You see? So this is the purpose of forgiveness. My only job is to be helpful by seeing the truth of my brothers. If I want to see the truth of my brothers, I have to first of all know the truth of myself and then share that identity with my brothers. So the first thing I have to do if I want to remember what I am, this holy place that thoughts can enter not, the Course says there is a place in your mind that remembers perfect peace. Yes, there is. But I have to stop judging. I have to stop mixing myself up with the ego's judgments. And the means of doing that is forgiveness. So for me to remember what I am that can't judge, which is pure awareness, Pure, unconditioned consciousness. That's the Holy Spirit in my mind. And it's shining there right now. I just keep jumping over it to jump into the ego's judgment. So what I have to do is I have to see my brother without saying he should be different. Moore says it's not your place to change your brother, but to accept him exactly as he is. Because you can't remember what you are until you do. In every instance, my job is surrender to the present moment because all things work together for good. There are no exceptions except in the ego's judgment. The only purpose this moment has is for me to remember who I am and share that identity with my brother. And I first of all have to allow him to be exactly as he is. Only when I do that does peace return to my mind to tell me what I am that isn't the insane voice talking to itself in my mind. And that place of peace that comes when judgment stops, now I know my brother is this with me. We're not dream figures. So the course, just two quick quotes before I sign off. Accept as true only what your brother is, if you would know yourself. Perceive what he is not, and you cannot know what you are, because you see him falsely. Remember always that your identity is shared, and that its sharing is its reality. That's from chapter 9. Chapter 14, it's from section 10, paragraph 12. Earlier, I said this course will teach you how to remember what you are, restoring to you your identity. We have already learned that this identity is shared. The miracle becomes the means of sharing it. By supplying your identity wherever it is not recognized, you will recognize it. The miracle is how I share an identity with my brother. How I stop identifying as a dream figure, a body and an insane voice talking to itself that's pretending to be me. I come home to the peace in my mind by allowing the world. The Course says, what can frighten me when I allow all things to be exactly as they are? Absence of judgment. Everything is as it should be. Its only purpose is forgiveness. I allow the world to be what it is. In doing that, a peace comes. When I stop fighting, when I stop pushing and pulling, when I stop trying to impose my will on a world when I don't know what anything is for, and the Course tells me all things are working together for good, there's no exceptions, I let go. I surrender. I let my brother be exactly what it is, because its only purpose is that by my surrender, I can have peace come back into my mind, which is the truth of what I am, and share that identity with my brother. And everything that comes from here will be kind and guided and loving and helpful. That's the extension of the miracle. So that's the purpose of forgiveness.
Thank you, Keith. Now, I have a question that would be a long answer, and I'm going to ask a go round of short answers. But if someone is coming at you to attack you, or let's just say you have a child with you coming to attack that child, what is the place of boundaries in this belief system of the Course? There's an acceptance that everything is perfect. Do you sit there and let someone come at you? What would you each do in that? I talked about the story of, picking up the stick if someone's desecrating the temple. What would you each do if someone was coming at you? And try and keep it to like 3 sentences, because I know we're really pressed for time now. And I'm just going to go backwards and start with you, Keith.
Okay. The first thing you have to
acceptance.
If you do not accept the present moment, you will react as an ego. Okay. If you first of all surrender, if you let go of the no, this shouldn't be happening because I know better than the Holy Spirit, if you let that go, you cease to identify with the mind, and there's a stillness here, which is the Holy Spirit. And you will make a guided, helpful, loving decision from here. It might be stern, it might be forceful, it could be lethal, but it will come from a place of acceptance and love. It won't come from a place of judgment and fear and pain.
Thank you. And Richard.
Well, it's unanswerable. I mean, the honest truth is, I have no idea what I would do. I would do one thing one day if that happened. I would do another thing in another day in another context if that happened. I can sit here and blather about what I might do in any hypothetical situation, but I've dealt too long with hypothetical philosophical situations to be able to take them seriously. The short answer is I have no idea what I would do.
Thank you. Thank you for your honesty. And Bruce.
In working with 200 elderly people in the building as the president of the Residents Association, I feel I've been working to keep my heart open. And I find that I have friends throughout the building, and yet I see those friends bitterly talking about each other, but not about me. Now, I'm not trying to say anything by that, except I'm comfortable with keeping the heart open. And as I do, I feel that I can express things in a loving way that calms things down and allows there to be a bit of a breath. And I've seen miracles this way. And one other point is in doing my past life regression years ago, and a young man remembered being a centurion at the time of Jesus, saying, "Oh, that Jesus guy, he's sermonizing over there. We've got to find a way to put him under. You know, he's going to be a rabble rouser." And he went, Jesus is turning and he's looking, oh, directly at me, and oh, I've never felt such love in all my life. And he was weeping in his trance at the remembrance of Jesus' way of dealing with negativity was pure love, so powerful. So that's the goal. All I can do at this point is keep the heart open and work with that, with the sense that the Holy Spirit is there in that relationship, no matter how crazy my residents, fellow residents, and it's working, it's helping. So I leave on that note of hope.
Thank you so much. And I would agree, for me, it's if I'm in alignment and I am in love, Spirit will tell me what to do. And it's being able to take that breath instead of be reactive. Being active is different than being reactive.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that and hope that we can each take something from this webinar today of how we can shift our perceptions from fear to love. And Celina, I hand it over to you.
Sure. So thank you so much, Tam, and everyone. Everything you said today, I'm sure has met someone, and it was exactly what needed to happen. And looking, and you all have seen how the chat has lit up, and also we've had lots of Q&A reflective of both love and also sticky feelings of separation. So I thoroughly believe that everything that has been said today is going to meet someone. And for those who feel like, oh, my question wasn't answered, I urge you to listen to this again, because the answer is there in all of your talk. So I thought, we don't have much time left. I thought I would take a few questions, or take one question left, but I think you all have answered it. And in sitting here and listening to you and asking, I thought, okay, what is the best way to end this? Asking Spirit. And so what came to me was to read part of this lesson. And I invite you, I'm going to read it. And we'll take a minute or so, if it's okay, at the end, and just be quiet for a minute before we sign off. So.
And in that quiet, I also invite that we experience love together, no matter which sides of the ego have come up, that we all join in the commonality of A Course in Miracles.
Thank you, Tam. Again, part of the lesson, lesson 104, I seek but what belongs to me in truth. Today's idea continues with the thought that joy and peace are not but idle dreams. They are your right because of what you are. They come to you from God, who cannot fail to give you what he wills, yet must there be a place made ready to receive his gifts. They are not welcomed gladly by a mind that has instead received the gifts it made where his belong as substitutes for them. Today we would remove all meaningless and self-made gifts which we have placed upon the holy altar where God's gifts belong. His are the gifts that are our own in truth. His are the gifts that we inherited before time was, and that we will still be ours when time has passed into eternity. His are the gifts that are within us now, for they are timeless, and we need not wait to have them. They belong to us today. I seek but what belongs to me in truth, and joy and peace are my inheritance. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. As we bring our discussion to a close, we want to extend our deep gratitude to our participants, our guests, our audience, and our entire webinar support team. So before we say goodbye, we have a couple of important announcements to share. So, inviting you all to stay connected with the Foundation for Inner Peace. And we invite you to explore our digital resources. We have upcoming webinars and course teachings. We're going to share some helpful links in the chat for you. So, please see it on this replay if you're not watching this live. A Course in Miracles has been made freely available for decades thanks to the generosity of our community. So, if you feel inspired to support our work, we sincerely appreciate any donations that allow us to continue sharing this path of love and forgiveness. And so, with that, with love and gratitude to all of you, thank you for being here, and we look forward to having you soon again. Bye.